Welcome to the Narrate podcast, where we aim to tell God's story with our lives. We'll be continuing to post the Sunday message each week, but we want to dive a little deeper and offer some content to supplement your life with God, and that's where our Beyond Sunday series comes in. Join Adam and Narrate staff as they provide thoughtful discussions, ideas, and interviews that go beyond the message you'll hear on Sunday.
So we're going to talk about this new series that we're doing called The Generosity Practice, which we'll talk a little bit more about that title. Just curious though, like new to pastoral work yourself, like what's your background with the topic of generosity?
Generosity, like tithing specifically, or just like
any of it, all of it? Yeah.
Well, I grew up in a household where tithing was really important, and it was like the 10% tithing. We did that my family did that. It was something we talked about. So it's pretty like familiar to me, to the point where, and I my parents know that I tell this story, so that I think they're okay with it. But once upon a time, my parents won a large sum of money in the lottery. They didn't like win the lottery, but it was like a big chunk of money. And they tithed 10% of it. And so they got to write this giant check to their church. And they did it like before anything else. And they were like, we're doing this so you girls have this model of like, you know, you always give 10%. And I was like, I think I was like 15 or something like that at the time. And I was like, that would be really hard.
Yeah.
I just recognized like how difficult it would have been to write that large of a check.
So did you guys do the thing growing up where you like, if you got a $10 bill for your birthday, you had to give $1 away, or how did
No, it wasn't really like that. It was just like my parents did the family thing, and we didn't, I don't really think my parents micromanaged our bank accounts. Like when I had my first jobs and things like that, I don't think that they even asked. I think they like taught us, and then they were like, you do your thing. And
have you ever deviated?
Oh yeah. Yeah. When I went to college, there were times where I didn't, and like kind of coincided with like when I wasn't going to church regularly. And it is funny, and we've talked about this before, that like things just don't go well when you don't. For me anyways, it was always so noticeable when and sometimes it wasn't even conscious. It would be like I would come back to that thought and be like, oh yeah, I haven't given anything, I haven't tithed or whatever you want to call it in a long time, and I'm like struggling, I'm paycheck to paycheck, I'm struggling, and then the second I would get back into it, it would be like, okay, everything just works out. And you know, back then when you're working with, I was donating plasma to get money back then to pay my rent and stuff in college.
I remember doing that.
So it's like every penny
felt like you suck on a salt lick the whole day. You'd be so dehydrated.
And I'd ride my bike or like run to the plasma center, donate, and then like run home, ride my bike home.
And if you went
twice, a horrible idea.
Right. We did that a few times too. Yeah. Well, and that makes the point of, I love John Mark Comer's statement, generosity is certainly about more than money, but it's not about less. I think, but it's a giant piece of it and a test of it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think for me that the why then behind this series, it's been in the back of my head. I try to be attentive to, I'd like to think like how the Holy Spirit's kind of nudging and just what are the needs topically within us. And I've had this sense for quite a long time, months, that it's been a very long time since I've taught on tithing. Like my background was, I was at a church that became a mega church that it felt like when I left talked a lot about money and especially did a lot of capital campaigns, but also was extremely generous, gave us $100,000 to plant Narrate. So there's a tension there. But then my main mentor, Fred, his model was to never talk about money. And within his, I guess, not-for-profit, he would say, like, he's got more money than he could ever spend, and he gives tons and tons of stuff away, and he never talks about money. And so I more adopted Fred's model. But I think as I look back on it now, I'm like, and I think Duncan Dine demonstrated this on Sunday, there are so many people around Narrate who are very young in their faith and families, and I'd like to think that part of what's driving this, and this isn't just about money, is just this very sincere in their faith, but developing an imagination for God's generous heart, I think, is such a huge piece of for all of us. And I think it's so your background's similar, where you kind of take for granted financial generosity was always a piece of the faith puzzle.
Yeah.
I
But
don't
it
think
is
that's
weird
typical.
if it wasn't, like, it can be a really weird,
Super
uncomfortable thing to
Yeah.
talk about. And even, like, you mentioned Fred, never talked about money, but he still, like, had these practices, it sounds like.
Right.
So it's like that
And
tension.
yeah, never. And I guess by never talked about money, meaning never talked about paying for his services, or never solicited donations, never did fundraisers. I mean, he taught about money. He taught about giving and saving quite a lot, but not in ways that were direct to him. But then Comer, and I think I'll probably say this on a Sunday, he named something that was really helpful to me, was where he just said, like, this notion that so when I teach on money, I have dual relationship with everybody in the room, and that's true. Because I guess you could say both of us benefit when other people are what I would call obedient with their money. But at the same time, we have a responsibility in the same way doctors and therapists and psychiatrists have responsibilities to also be teaching. So some of the background there, I guess what I'm belaboring the point is just, I do think there's quite a volume of pretty unchurched people who have developed pretty sincere faith, and I just think that, like, discovering how generosity plays into the joys of following Jesus is so huge, and that's not just money, that's time, that's talent, that's just learning to give our lives away is pretty awesome.
Yeah, because it is about more than just Narrate or our church. It's about people's individual spiritual lives. But I totally get what you're saying, that's hard coming from you as the pastor of
right.
the
It's
church.
just just a thing. But heart doctors also have to look at people with clogged arteries and say, like, you need to change your lifestyle. So I mean, I think that's part of the responsibility. I think too is, as I get old, I can see, like, Narrate exists because in large part a generation before my own, and in some ways 2 generations before my own, they had such a value for generosity in all the parts that made a church plant like Narrate possible. And so there's some inspiration there around, I want to be a part of giving to the world in that way, not just taking, and developing in all of our, whether it impacts Narrate or impacts dollars anywhere, is kind of only part of it, of just I love the way Comer starts the series, which is just God is generous, like that's the driver. Which maybe we should talk a little bit about the practicing the way
right
thing.
I was gonna say, you mentioned John Mark Comer. Tell us about his.
And even I've debated, like, do we call it the generosity practice or just generosity? So John Mark Comer, if you don't know, was a very successful pastor in Portland, built a multi-campus church called Bridgetown, and then way before COVID kind of unwound that, and actually they slowly turned all those campuses into independent churches. He maintained leadership over the one in downtown Portland. He's just a 10-talent leader and communicator and thinker. And then, I don't know how long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, so he left that church in order to start something called Practicing the Way, which is kind of in the Dallas Willard, Richard Foster vein of, so Practicing the Way is trying to play a big role in helping churches do a better job of incorporating spiritual practices into their culture. In fact, part of the way he talks about it is to gauge success by things other than just attendance and dollars, which is so easy to do. So I don't know how many of these practices they've done series on, but this is one. Generosity is one of them. So I'm really going to do this kind of lectionary style, where he has a podcast, he has a video that the small groups will use, he has all kinds of materials that people like me could use to the extent I wanted to, but I've just basically taken not one of the main teaching texts, and actually even in the first week I've even changed what the main teaching text is, and I'm going to kind of teach that lectionary style but follow his themes, and then those small groups will utilize his videos.
Okay. So. Yeah, and I actually didn't know that he had like videos that went. I've listened to the podcast quite a bit, and it's really great. So if anybody wants to supplement with that, it kind of goes through the generosity stuff on there. But so I'm really excited to see the videos and hear more about that in depth.
And it's all free. They're given, part of the way they're doing it is they're giving it all away. So
yeah.
And fun fact, John Mark Comer is on staff now at an Anglican church. So he's the teaching pastor at Vintage, which is the largest church in C4SO, and the one that probably most of the people there don't know is Anglican, but I just think that's hilarious.
And that's pretty recent, right? Like that's
in the last year or two, maybe. Yeah. So it's relatively recent.
That's cool. Okay, so then the small groups kind of were born of wanting to use those videos. What else do you want to say about those?
Yeah, and I mean, I think last year we didn't do book groups in September, and just kind of realized like, that's a time when people are really reaching for those. But then also recognizing, as we've named in emails this week and from the stage, if you're a couple with a couple little tiny kids or a couple kids in general, those groups can be difficult. So there's the opportunity to do that material within your own household, or to create your own kind of ad hoc group, and we can just it's real easy to get you those resources. Yes. I think for me the series will be a win. I mean, how that translates financially to Narrate is really, I think I can say, genuinely not the goal. I mean, do we have bills and are there trends and things? Yeah, for sure. But I just think, I have a friend who does jiu-jitsu. Most of you will know who I'm talking about. And the gym here in town that he's a part of is a part of a national gym. Have I told you this story?
I don't know.
I think it's like the neatest thing. It's a part of a national gym, and part of what they get from the national gym is the main guru, who's like the guru with the national gyms, comes to town once a year. And he'll spend, as I understand it, several hours Friday afternoon rolling, is what they call it in jiu-jitsu, with as many people from that gym as they can. And then he spends that evening kind of internally assessing what are the systemic weaknesses, because he's just observing these people roll together all the time. Therefore, if one person, there's going to be these weaknesses that kind of are a thread through the whole thing, which is very vulnerable of the main leader here, because ultimately that's, I guess he could take it as an indictment on himself. And then the next day, he puts together a 2 or 3 hour, this same guy, the big guru, puts together this 2 or 3 hour training program, but it all is intended to address what he's deemed are their systemic weaknesses. And I wouldn't want to say that generosity is a systemic weakness of Narrate. I think, if anything, probably the opposite. I mean, there's just we do a lot for a lot of people. But I do think within that conversation, and especially in our community, there's scarcity just comes at us. Like, left to ourselves, scarcity is always going to set in. So I mean, I'm even personally challenged. There's a couple areas in my own life I was taught early on to increase your giving percentage every year, and we stopped doing that several years ago. And even that's a conversation of you can become generous, kind of like you can become in shape. You can, you can train for a marathon, but 2 months later you can actually no longer be in the physical.
It's not a destination. It's like a journey.
So I think that's and recognizing that a lot of the people who made Narrate possible have retired and died, and so if Narrate's going to persist, then it's going to require not just money, but because this also, like band, you think about how generous a band member is with their time. I mean, if someone's on band on Sunday, have you ever counted up how many hours have they put in that week?
Yeah, it's 2 at least Thursdays, and then all Sunday morning.
And Sunday morning's like
noon,
So there's 7 hours, and that's if they haven't practiced at all.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think about someone who runs tech, and same thing, or I mean, someone who helped at Dunkin' Dine this last week. I mean, so it's not just a money thing, it's having an imagination for I love in Hebrews it says, Jesus says it's more blessed to give than receive, even though what's awesome about that verse is it's not in the Gospels, but the Bible says that Jesus said it. But so it's one thing to like intellectually know that, and it's another thing to experience it. And then I think the people that I know that are good at generosity are also aware this is a muscle just kind of constantly be exercised.
Yep. It's uncomfortable.
It really is, yeah.
It really is. And I can say that even as somebody who has like grown up hearing about that, it is, yeah, Jonathan and I have had times where we're like, oh, like this hurts this month or whatever.
Totally,
like,
yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, I was just talking with a friend in an earlier meeting who was like, this realization of, oh, that's a cabin. Like that's a car payment. I mean, and that's just the money side, but it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think really, really awesome and valuable when we lean into it.
So if somebody has not had that in their past, a conversation about generosity or tithing, what would be like a win for you? Like if they, what would be a great takeaway for them in your mind?
I mean, I think it could go a lot of places of someone who develops an imagination for volunteering in some capacity, even if not at Narrate, at their school, like time. I think generosity gets broken into a few components, right? Time, talents, and treasures. And I think the danger is, and this is where I'm hoping that we get pushed a little, is it's actually quite possible to be very generous with your time, but not at all with your money, and vice versa. And it's also quite possible to be really talented and only use your talents to make money, you know. So it's a complicated, awesome thing. And then I also think within the financial piece, we could talk about percentages, but I also think Comer does a great job in this series of just going like, just start somewhere. Like put a $50 bill in your pocket and find someone to give it to this week. Start at 0.5%, start at 1%. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to, because it is hard for a family. And I think maybe it's helpful to name, we live in this cultural moment, like more so than in my lifetime, you could rationalize becoming greedy. Because it's true, like things are just objectively more expensive. So it's that much easier to just kind of rein it in for yourself.
Yeah, but the scarcity thing is a big piece of it, because it's like this, you're teetering on this edge of like, we don't have that to give, but then when you do give it, like good thing, it's like that trust faith piece, and it's really tough, because it's hard to say that to someone who's not familiar with that and say, no, it's going to work out,
right?
Because it's like, can you guarantee that? And it's a really personal thing.
Well, and emotionally, until you live on less than you make, so you could accomplish that by saving, you could accomplish that by giving, you could accomplish that by burning it in the street. And this is a conversation I have with my kids relatively often. Until you live on less than you make, then you literally cannot be content. Like, as long as income going up and quality of life going up are on the same trajectory, then you're living the trap of the answer to the question, how much more do you need, is always more.
You're right. That's a great point. Yeah.
And there's there's studies out there that people could find by Googling. There actually are there's a certain range of income.
I've seen those, yeah.
That it's super fascinating. But again, like, I think that could be applied to time as well.
Yeah.
Like, for someone like me, you might actually enjoy writing if you wrote 4 hours less a week and spent some of that time doing something for someone else. Like, so it's not just a money thing.
Yeah.
But also, I think it is also a money thing. That's the tension.
Yeah.
And life is expensive.
Yeah.
Who was it? Was that at Q 2 years ago? I think of this one often too, where that guy said, every one of us is living better than European kings lived in the medieval era. Whew, that's
like, we're all, I think he used the word like luxury, or like, we're all living like so wild. Comfortably compared to.
Can you see that even your childhood versus like the standard? Do you feel like the standard of living is higher now?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's just like we all, maybe it's a post-COVID thing. I don't know, but I am very guilty of this. That like, I'm a creature comfort person. Like if I'm uncomfortable and something's gonna fix it, I'm gonna get that thing. And if like, you know, it's just this like,
yeah, that's true.
It's not a problem, but I do think it's something to be aware of. Like we just live in this area where you're like, oh, you know, I can pull up my phone, order this thing on Amazon, and it's here in 2 days.
Right.
It takes zero effort for me to be like 100% comfortable and satisfied at all times.
And it comes to us by way of foreign labor, so it's cheap.
Yeah, I don't have to think about it. It just shows up at my door. And
that's what someone was explaining to me, like that's why housing's gone up, but this person was like, your Nike shoes are the same cost now as when you were in high school in 1995. Why is that? And he was like, because we can outsource your Nike shoes to the cheapest labor, but we can't outsource plumbing or sheetrockers to that. I mean, on some level we can, but not entirely.
Right.
But Mark Sayers, who I think his church in Melbourne is called Red Church, he was the one that I heard name this notion that he points to some research that would say part of the angst right now, and this was probably more true around 2020, but I think it's still very true, is the quality of life that we were afforded in the early 2000s is not sustainable. And his point was, but the quality of life that we had as Americans in the 1980s probably is. But what's happening is there's this recognizing like that was probably the pinnacle, and so we're really resistant to what was actually a pretty high quality of life. But and to the extent then that we buy into that, then we hoard more. So the 4 weeks, just so you don't feel like it's going to be 4 weeks of talking about money, it's God is generous. So we're just going to look at life through that lens of just a generous God. I think of it in terms of like we can come at this from a you better, or we come at this from a inspirational like I can space. And then this watch out for greed, which is something Jesus says quite a bit. And then I'm kind of retitling this one. One of Fred's isms with me was never own anything. Or another way to say that is everything belongs to God. And then the 4th week will speak directly to generosity in the poor. So it's not four messages on tithing. It's 4 messages on generosity as a virtue and trusting where the Spirit takes that with people. But being more direct than a lot of people will probably have ever heard me be in some cases I've ever been.
Right.
So
what's the this might be a hard question because we're biased automatically, but for someone who doesn't currently have a generosity practice, what's like the buy-in for them?
I would guess that they do. It's just locating it, because that person probably knows the satisfaction of like holding the door open for the old lady at the store. And I think it's scaling that and recognizing like that's the triune God who's made you. And how did I was just working on Christmas Eve today, and one of the church fathers said we're all made in God's image, but we have to grow in his likeness. And I think so we all have areas of our life where we are generous, and just identifying them and then scaling them out. And again, this is the dual relationship thing of people like me in places like this, people like us in places like this, have and can and will again take advantage of that. But it reminds me of that great statement of the opposite of the wrong thing is not no thing, it's the right thing. So the buy-in is there's more joy in giving than receiving, and leaning into that. The day I started studying this series, I got a brand new to me bike shock that I didn't need, and I went to go put it on my bike frame and I cracked it. And I was like the first morning I started studying the watch out for greed piece. And there was this like, oh yeah, so I also am very guilty of this.
I also can have greed in my life.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's in all of us. And we live in a market economy, obviously, that's all predicated upon this.
Yeah, it's like designed to continue us on that path.
Totally.
Which is really hard.
Yeah.
But I love that, the practice of generosity is about more than what church you're going to and how much you tithe.
Totally.
It's totally a personal virtue, a personal piece of your spiritual life.
It's really a life hack, right? I mean, it's because if it's true, if it's who God is and we're made in His image, then it's a major pathway then to, as Jesus talks about, when you find your life, you lose it. When you lose it, you find it. I mean, but there's no. It's like the trust fall. You have to try it, and I think that's. I've heard it done that way before. Of like, just try it for a few months. Try, I mean, whether that's volunteering on a team or volunteering at your kids' school, or putting a $10 bill in your pocket once a week and deciding you're going to give it to somebody, or giving on a percentage basis. Just try it and then assess. Yep. So, I guess lots of preview songs that deal with money.
We met and picked all of them already.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What are they?
The first week is "Can't Buy Me Love" by the Beatles,
oh, sweet.
which I know you guys have done before, but it's been a couple of years.
That's. What else? Are you doing that Dolly Parton song? What is that? There's that famous "Lord, Won't You Buy Me."
Oh.
What is that? You could probably sing Dolly Parton really well.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't think of that one.
What is that? I can't even get the line.
I can't either. Yeah, I just thought of working 9 to 5.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
That's the only one I can think of.
What is there's that classic, "Lord, Won't You Buy Me." Yeah, I can't get it either. Anyway.
Yeah, what else? We tossed around "If I Had $1 Million" by Bare Naked Ladies.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of songs that have to do with money.
Totally.
"Money, Money" by ABBA. We didn't do either of those.
Okay.
You'll just have to come to gatherings and see what they are.
Sweet. Well, thanks. And I guess this will post in time if you're interested in one of those small groups. I think one of them's filled. You could go to Facebook and find the other ones. I'm sure there's something there, or email Hannah. But I don't know the other times of the other 3 right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't either, but I know Russ and Michelle's is the one.
The Sunday one's full, yeah. Sweet.
Cool.
Thanks.
If you'd like to learn more about Narrate Church, find us online at narratechurch.org.
You can also look us up on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for listening.